and I would let myself be consumed by maggots before mocking the family name and making you heir to Casterly Rock.
Why?
Why? You ask that? You who killed your mother to come into the world?
This is probably one of the most disturbing scenes I've ever seen in Game of Thrones. But what makes it so disturbing isn't blood, violence, or a shocking death. Instead, the real horror comes from something far sharper than any sword: words. Words filled with so much hatred that it's almost unthinkable for a father to ever say them to his son. And to be honest, this scene stands out from the other scenes I've analyzed earlier because unlike the rest, it's pretty much a word-for-word adaptation of Martin's writing. I mean, yes, the other scenes were powerful in their own right, but this one hits differently because you could take this conversation out of Westeros and place it anywhere in the real world, and it would still sting just as much. It's raw, painful, and brutally honest. This, Game of Thrones at its best.
Yes, it is.
So what makes this scene so powerful? What really makes it one of the greatest scenes in Game of Thrones? I mean, as always, I'll talk about all of these things in detail, but first we need some context. This scene takes place right after the Battle of Blackwater. Tyrion's just put everything on the line as Hand of the King. He led the charge, defended the city, and nearly got himself killed. Now that the battle is over and Stannis is defeated, he goes to see his father, and after everything he's done for the family, he asks for Casterly Rock. But Tywin doesn't give him what he's asking for. He doesn't even thank him. Instead, he shuts him down with bitter words, full of resentment. At this point, you might think Tyrion would be used to it. After all, his father has always treated him like this. But this time feels different, because this is the first time we hear exactly what Tywin really thinks of him, and this breaks Tyrion. But what makes this scene so tragic isn't just Tywin's cruelty. It's also the fact that even though Tyrion knows how much his father despises him, and even though he has every reason to hate him back, there's still this small, almost childlike part of him that hopes he might finally earn his father's approval. He doesn't just want Casterly Rock. What he really wants is to finally be seen as worthy. But right from the start of the scene, Tywin does what he always does. Makes him feel like he'll never be enough.
I sent you here to advise the king. I gave you real power and authority. You chose to spend your days, as you always have, bedding harlots and drinking with thieves.
Now, at first glance, you might think these lines are just straight up criticism, but there's actually an insidious manipulation at play. The thing is, Tywin doesn't just criticize him, he consistently creates this illusion that Tyrion's rejection is based solely on his behavior. Just look at how skillfully he frames things. He presents himself as this fair father who's given his son every opportunity and power, only to have Tyrion waste them through drinking and womanizing. But what Tywin conveniently leaves out is that all those so-called opportunities are always about his own interests. I mean, remember back in season 1 when Tywin named him as Hand of the King? Jaime had just been captured by Robb Stark, and Tywin needed someone to hold things together in King's Landing. The show doesn't spell this out, but in the books, Tyrion figures it out. His father had already given up on Jaime, and Tyrion was just the backup plan. But when Tyrion confronts him about it, Tywin doesn't give him a straight answer. Instead, he serves up another manipulative response, one that plays right into Tyrion's need to be accepted.
Why not my uncle? Why not anyone? Why me?
You're my son.
You see, this is the heart of Tyrion's tragedy. Even though he knows his father is playing him, he still wants to believe that there's a version of reality where he can finally be enough. Finally be loved and respected, because that's the thing about feelings. They don't care about how smart you are. But by the end of the scene, we learn that painful truth. He will never be able to get what he wants. Because it was never about what he does. It was always about what he is.
Occasionally, I drank with the harlots.
What do you want, Tyrion?
Why does everyone assume I want something? Can't I simply visit with my beloved father? My beloved father, who somehow forgot to visit his wounded son.
Now, this is where things get way more dramatic than in the books. Because at this point, the show takes a slight turn from the books and makes Tyrion feel way more emotional and vulnerable, while Tywin becomes even colder and more detached. And if you take a closer look, you'll see that even the set design has been subtly hinting at this all along. I mean, just look at this frame for a second. Tywin Lannister, arguably the most powerful man in Westeros, dominates the left side of the screen as this dark, imposing figure with the Lannister lion looming above him. Tyrion, on the other hand, is small but shining brightly against the darkness, a glimmer of light in the dark that surrounds them. And soon enough, all those subtleties come together and laid out in the words.
I organized the defense of this city, while you held court in the ruins of Harrenhal. I led the foray when the enemies were at the gate, while your grandson, the king, quivered in fear behind the walls.
Now, I've got to pause here for a second because Charles Dance's performance is just incredible. Just look at him. The way he plays Tywin, with his body language and even with the tiniest shift in his eyes, is so precise that you instantly get what's going on inside his head. In that moment, you clearly see that Tywin couldn't care less about what Tyrion is saying. It's like he's not listening to him at all, like he isn't even in the room. And then, when he finally looks at him, you can see that he's already bored with this conversation. Meanwhile, Tyrion doesn't see any of this and still trying to make his case.
I bled in the mud for our family. And as my reward, I was trundled off to some dark little cell. But what do I want? A little bloody gratitude would be a start.
Jugglers and singers require applause. You are a Lannister.
I mean, what a line. Seriously, this is probably one of the most defining lines Tywin Lannister ever says. At first, it might not hit you that way, but trust me, it says a lot. Because in just a few words, he doesn't just shut Tyrion down. He gives us a crystal clear look at how he sees his family. And even more than that, it explains further why Tyrion will never be able to turn that illusion into reality. Let me explain it this way. Just as I mentioned in my previous video, Tywin is completely obsessed with identifying his family with the lion on their sigil. In his mind, just as lions naturally dominate other animals in the wild, House Lannister must tower over everyone else. He believes lions don't get praise for catching their prey, because that's simply what lions do. And in the same way, Lannisters shouldn't need recognition for their superiority. It should just be expected. Now, in theory, you would think Tyrion would be judged by these same standards, but this is where Tywin's manipulation comes out once again. Despite what he claims here, in his eyes, Tyrion never even qualified to be judged as a lion in the first place. At the end of the day, the bar for being a true Lannister is always set by Tywin himself. But somehow, that bar keeps moving just out of Tyrion's reach every time he gets close, because it's all about keeping him trapped in that illusion. Up to this point, the whole scene feels like a quiet chess game between father and son. They're both carefully watching each other, waiting to see who'll make the first move, and neither of them says exactly what they're thinking, but it's all there in the subtext. But now that chess game is about to end, and that's when the scene reaches its peak. Tywin, who already fed up with his son's complaints, tells him to get to the point, and then Tyrion finally lays it all out there.
I want what is mine by right. Jaime is your eldest son, heir to your lands and titles, but he is a king's guard, forbidden from marriage or inheritance. The day Jaime put on the White Cloak, he gave up his claim to Casterly Rock. I am your son and lawful heir.
You want Casterly Rock.
It is mine by right.
First of all, this is where we see Tyrion realizing something important. His father won't give him what he wants out of love or affection. That's why he brings up Jaime's vow as a Kingsguard and his own rights as the lawful heir. He's hoping that maybe the laws of men will succeed where love has failed. But if you watch closely, there's still this underlying insecurity in Tyrion. You can see it all over his face, especially in that final shot. And then there's Tywin. The second he realizes Tyrion's asking for Casterly Rock, his whole expression changes. Just look at his reaction again. This is the first flash of the anger that's about to boil over. The idea that his son, that stunted fool he's always despised, dares to ask for the seat of mighty House Lannister. It's like both infuriating and amusing to him. Still, for a split second he swallows his rage and tries to offer a more diplomatic response just like Tyrion did, but it doesn't last.
We'll find you accommodations more suited to your name. And when the time is right, you'll be given a position fit for your talents, so that you can serve your family and protect our legacy. And if you serve faithfully, you'll be rewarded with a suitable wife. And I would let myself be consumed by maggots before mocking the family name and making you heir to Casterly Rock.
Why?
Now, this one simple question might be the most emotionally charged line in the entire scene. It's the question of a man who already knows the answer, but he needs to hear it anyway. When Tyrion delivers that line, you immediately realize that this isn't just about Casterly Rock. It's about a son desperately trying to understand why his father has always hated him, why he never showed him love or even a simple affection. This is the ultimate question that's been haunting Tyrion his entire life. And what follows is one of the most brutal, uncomfortable, and yet brilliantly written moments we have ever seen in Game of Thrones.
Why? You ask that? You who killed your mother to come into the world? You are an ill-made, spiteful little creature, full of envy, lust, and low cunning. Men's laws give you the right to bear my name and display my colors, since I cannot prove that you are not mine. And to teach me humility, the gods have condemned me to watch you waddle about, wearing that proud lion that was my father's sigil and his father's before him. But neither gods nor men will ever compel me to let you turn Casterly Rock into your whorehouse.
I mean, where do you even begin with this? These words are absolutely brutal. So much so that Charles Dance, who plays Tywin Lannister, actually kept apologizing to Peter Dinklage between the takes.
And I spend a lot of time apologizing to him because I treat him like shit.
Because as Tywin, he isn't just denying Tyrion his inheritance. He's also stripping him of his pride and dignity. He even actively dehumanizes him. I mean, it's too much. And then there's Tyrion's reaction. He doesn't lash out, he doesn't argue, he just takes it. At this point, I have to talk about how amazing Peter Dinklage is. He doesn't say a single word during that monologue, but somehow he makes you feel everything. The anger, the pain, and that devastating sense of resignation, it's all there. Even this subtle ghost of a smile says a lot. It's the smile of someone who realizes he should have known better, that he always knew. You see, this moment is already an amazing piece of art on its own. But what really takes it to another level is to understanding where all those hateful words actually come from. Because when you start peeling back the layers, especially if you've read the books, you realize something important. Tywin's hatred doesn't come out of nowhere. It's actually rooted in his own trauma. And in Tyrion, he sees the living, breathing embodiment of all of it. Let me explain. When Tywin looks at Tyrion, he sees two things. The first, of course, his wife Joanna's death. And the second, something he sees as a walking insult to everything he's tried to build, a dwarf. The antithesis of the proud Lannister image he's obsessed with. First of all, yes, Joanna died giving birth to Tyrion, but any reasonable man, especially someone as smart as Tywin, would know that Tyrion isn't actually to blame for that. But logic isn't the point here, emotion is. Because in the books, we're told Tywin loved Joanna deeply. Some even say that the best part of him died with her. That's exactly why he calls him a punishment from the gods, because the gods took away the one person who made him truly happy, and in return gave him a dwarf son, a source of mockery. And this brings us back to Tywin's obsession with the perfect Lannister image. Again, as we learn in the books, Tywin's father was mocked by the other noble houses. He tarnished the once proud Lion's legacy and nearly brought House Lannister to ruin. On the other hand, Tywin spent his whole life trying to undo that shame, and in the end became a man completely consumed by his family's image, someone who couldn't stand the idea of being laughed at. So when you see all of this, it's no surprise that why he looks at Tyrion with so much contempt. In his eyes, Tyrion is just history repeating itself. He's mocked wherever he goes, seen as a twisted parody of what a true Lannister should be, and to make everything even worse, he happens to be the one who killed a woman Tywin loved the most. But you see, this is the greatest irony of Tywin Lannister. Because for all of his brilliance, he's so blinded by his own trauma that he can't see the one son who might actually be the most like him. And in the end, he dies at the hands of the very son he refused to see. At the end of the scene, Tywin tells Tyrion to leave and to never speak of his rights to Casterly Rock. And then we see Tyrion once again. His face, already scarred by war, now crumbles under a completely different kind of pain. Physical wounds can heal over time, but this is something else. In that moment, Tyrion completely understands that no matter what he does, no matter how much he sacrifices, he will never be enough in his father's eyes. And that devastating realization becomes the first stone laid on the path to his unforgettable trial speech in Season 4, and ultimately, to the moment he kills his father. Now, if we look at the books, this transformation goes even further, because the books twist Tyrion into someone hateful, someone bitter and vengeful. After killing his father and escaping from the King's Landing, he dreams of burning it all down, of bringing fire and sword to everyone who's ever looked down on him. But the show, of course, softens that edge and eventually forgets about it. Still, every time I watch this scene, I'm reminded of what made Game of Thrones so great in the first place. It wasn't just the dragons or the battles, it was scenes like this. Because at the end of the day, Game of Thrones was always about one thing: the human heart in conflict with itself. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a comment, give a like, and click to subscribe. Your support will greatly help the mysterious algorithm notices me. And if you want to support me personally, you can join the channel by using the join button. See you next time.